Hey kids, howdy and welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. I'm here with Zoe. It's the 23rd of September. We're in the middle of the wormhole of eclipse season. How's it going over there for you, Zoe? Is it floaty and crazy and bumpy and...
You know, so far so good.
Okay.
I am not holding my breath, but I'm enjoying where I'm at.
I'm glad. And the week ahead is slim. It's not the bumpiest week in eclipse season. I mean, we are in the wormhole of an eclipse. And so we'll talk about everything that's coming up. But first, a question. Marcy writes, I hear you just got a puppy. I've seen some of the beautiful pictures you've shared on Instagram. I was wondering if you knew when she was born and if you had a chance to look at her astrological chart. And if you did, what it showed you. I'm so curious. We love your podcast, Marcy.
Michael,
I love this question.
So LA. I know we have listeners from all over, but we are based in LA, and
it's true. I can imagine.
You meet someone and their dog will do something. They're like, "Oh yeah, she's a Pisces."
Well, I have looked at her chart because I do know when she was born because it was on the rescue paperwork. And
Amazing.
This starts with this. Like, I got this dog very much from a healing in my heart perspective. Like, there was just a place I got to where it was like, I want an experience of love that's enormous. I want a love of my life. I thought I'd be married by now, honey, and that just didn't happen. Like, that was not the karma that I thought it was, the dharma, I should say, that I thought it was.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, it's like, I need a bigger expression of love. So, and I'm not going to tell the whole story of drawing Penelope to me, but it was a 3-year process of waiting and manifesting and being like, when the time is right, I will know. And when the time was right, I knew unequivocally, and I dove in. And so when I got her and I got the paperwork, I looked over at her little birth date and saw that it was March 22nd. That was my father's birthday. So just God. There, I was like, I literally got this puppy to help heal the daddy wound of lovability. And she's born on Daddy's birthday. Holy shit.
That's amazing.
So she has the same sun sign placement as my father did, Aries sun. So there's a little bit of fire in her because she's got that Aries sensibility. But she has Venus in Pisces. One of the most beautiful placements for Venus is Pisces. She's exalted there because there's love is love is love is love is love. It's just all love with Venus and Pisces. In fact, if she was a human being, I'd be like, watch out for like picking the wrong guy, loving too quickly, because Pisces Venus just loves fully. Well, her Venus is exactly, and I mean exactly conjunct my Chiron, the wounded spaces. So her heart plugs right into my wound, and it's direct. And you know me, if you followed me for a while, I love precision, and that precision just blew my mind when I saw it.
Yeah.
So the nodes of the moon are important in connection astrology, and what we call synastry, when we put one chart on top of the other or look at the two charts and how they reflect each other. If the nodes of the moon of one chart superimpose over significant points or planets in the other chart, then this is like a past life soulful connection. So my what's called foundational axis, my imam coli at the bottom representing home is 15 degrees of Aries, and the north node, the midheaven, work and career and public life is 15 Libra. Well, her north node is in Aries, conjunct my home point, and her south node is conjunct my public point. But it's like exact, which means that her dharma was to be my doggy. If I cast her chart for 12 noon, which is how I always cast for charts when I don't know what time someone was born, her rising sign is Cancer, right near my north node. Now we don't know what time she was born, so that's just a synchronicity, but it's really an interesting one when we go with the technique that I always use. My nodes line up with her rising. When I look at how she is attached to me and beholden to me and wants to please me, all of what I just described is operating. She's fiery in her own sort of way, Aries sun, but she's connected to daddy like we're one, and yet she can tether off of that and find her own independence. It's a wonderful sort of balance. A Velcro dog who happily unhooks and has her own sense of self, which is important. Like, the Velcro is important to me. I want this doggy to want me, love me, and want to be near me at all times, but I don't want to be suffocated by it. And she gives me the perfect balance of that. The last thing I'll share is that she has a really interesting Mars placement, and it took me a month or so to figure it out. When I saw it, I was like, well, that's significant. She has Mars at the 30th anaretic fated degree of Aquarius. That's a significant placement because it's a personal planet and it's at an anaretic degree. I was like, well, I know what I would say to a human being about this. I'd be like, you're unique and rebellious in your own sort of way through the world. You are guided by intuition and you might receive sudden shifts and downloads very quickly in life. You might be fast to move and fast to shift, and you don't really care what other people say about what you should do or how you should walk your walk. So it took me a while to see how this plays out, but this little doggy moves through the world like an electric cord that's been severed at the end. She's hyper aware to noises and shifts in her immediate environment. And as I've watched her walk, she sort of moves like my mother in these fast, quick little jolts when she hears a noise that she responds to. But not like someone, I was telling this to somebody the other day, you mean like squirrel? It's like, no, that's very deliberate. Squirrel is, oh, I see a squirrel, I'm interested in it. There's no consciousness in this edgy way she moves about. It's just like she's buzzing a little. Like she's just vibrating a little as she just walks.
Yeah.
Like, I'll watch her walking and see the shackles go up on her back and have no idea why. We're just walking in tandem, her next to me, but she's responding to something, that I can't see or hear or know, but she's responsive in that way. So yes, Marcy, I know her chart. It hooks up with mine beautifully, and thanks for asking.
Would you read someone's dog's chart if they made a session with you?
Absolutely. And I don't think I would have done that before I got her. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, what do you want me to do that for? But yeah, I think I would. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's not a lot to talk about this week. It's kind of a slim week, which is interesting because we just had
the equinox, right?
Yeah, we just had the full moon, the equinox, and we've got our next eclipse on October 2nd. So we're kind of in the lull of the months this week, but make no mistake about it, we're in the wormhole. In fact, someone on social media was like, what's a wormhole? I want to know more about that. And my response was, listen to my podcasts, because I wasn't going to explain it on social media. But the wormhole is just a phrase or a moniker that we give to the transformational aspects of eclipse season. We change in every lunar cycle. We change more in an eclipse lunar cycle. Accelerated movement, fast releases, fast new things coming, just lots happen in eclipse season that amplifies and makes the energy intense and bumpy, and we call that the wormhole. So it's not really an astrological thing. It's a creative way of saying we're out of ordinary space in eclipse season, so we just have a cute little name for that. So yeah, we just had the equinox, so we're in the Libra mansion, focus on balance and harmony. Venus is in Scorpio, so feelings are more intense than in other signs. She ain't happy there. Mars is in Cancer. That's his unhappy place too. Too much water and containment for his assertive impulses. The only clear thing we have going for us is Mercury's in Virgo, his home sign, and he's out of any sort of retrograde. So mind is clear, but everything else is a little bit challenged. The emotional body becomes, I don't know if it's right to say it's problematic when in Scorpio, but we're more likely to have intense experiences in our feeling level and our relationship experience with her in that side. And Mars disempowers us in Cancer because we sort of move into that space, and the first experience we have energetically is to be inhibited or pulled back, and Mars just fights and he wants to explode. So the general landscape is a little tiny bit debilitated. And we're in the third quarter moon tomorrow on Tuesday. Now, normally I wouldn't always talk about the third quarter moon unless it was a really quiet week and I needed to fill the time, which is maybe a little bit true today. But it's important to look at the quarter moons in an eclipse season because what the moon is doing is in this wormhole amplified way. So the third quarter moon is when we're tested to bring our A game. We've just learned a thing or two. At the full moon, we harvested something, made clear about gains that we've made, and know what we want to let go of and release. And so the third quarter moon is like, how'd that go? Are you ready to show up with a little bit more wisdom in your pocket? So sometimes the best way to describe the third quarter moon is to say, you'll be tested to bring what you've just learned with you to some experience that life is handing you as we move through the first couple of days of this week. There is a pace-setting transit that hits this month. There are not a lot of big sweeping energies in 2024. If you remember back in 2020, there were big, chunky conjunctions where Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter met up in early part of 2020 that led to the whole breakdown. 2021, you had Uranus and Saturn squaring each other all year. Those are big energies. So we don't have that this year or last year. And next year, it's all about the ingresses more than the interaction. So when we do have as we do this week, a social planet and an outer planet interacting with each other, I have to describe the energy because it's in there. But unlike 2020 and 2021, where my language would be big and broad and sweeping, and everybody would know the clunky things I was talking about because the world was reflecting the clunky geometry, and this year the world is reflecting a little more subtle ways in which Saturn, the teacher, and Pluto, the transformer, are impacting us. And in a semi-square, the net result of Saturn and Pluto interacting in this mild friction is growing pains. Saturn tells us what the pace is going to be. We want to move as we want to move, and Saturn's way is always to delay. If it's on purpose, not randomly delay, but create the pace that the world is ready to receive whatever things we are doing or building or working on or trying to put out into the world. Pluto means change. So we are in fact changing, and we are shepherding that change with some seriousness. But in a mild way, responsibility and change are bumping up against each other in some friction that I'm going to call growing pains and things moving slower than you wish they would. So it's hitting Wednesday, which means it's been building for the last couple of weeks as a peak, but this isn't the first time it hit this year. It hit back in May. So if you take a kind of growing pains where responsibility meets, the pace that things can actually go, and that might be mildly frustrating, we get a hit in the spring and a hit in the fall, and the whole calendar year has the sort of net impact of things don't move as we wish they were, and that there's sort of hard things we have to move through to create and generate the changes that are going on. You could certainly turn on the news if you want to see what I mean by that. All of the just ways in which we're kind of bumping and careening towards, at least in the United States, a big sort of November election and the aftermath of that. This transit has reflected those kinds of cultural and collective bumps and growing pains, but we're also all experiencing this on a personal level. This energy will release its sort of grip on keeping the pace a little bit slow as we move maybe a month or so. And when this is in our rearview mirror and Saturn is no longer holding this geometry with Pluto, and maybe things will speed up a little bit. But if you've been frustrated this year, this pace-setting transit might be why. Mercury moves into Libra on Thursday. Communication will go from being ruled by Mercury himself to communication being ruled by Venus. There's this thing called disposition in astrology, right? The planet has its own consciousness, and with Mercury, it's communication. But the sign that Mercury finds himself in is the mood he'll be in. So if he's in Virgo, then the mood is to talk and process and integrate and organize, and he's happy and on his game. He's like busy and getting it done and talking details. When the planet of communication gets his mood, his disposition from Venus, we're more balanced, we're harmonizing in our communication, great for mediating and approaching problem solving from a more fairness perspective and seeing both sides and coming to agreement. So it's a wonderful couple of weeks for negotiation from that kind of balanced perspective and coming from love a little bit more, with your words. Anybody who suffers from codependency or not being able to speak up enough might want to take a look at that while Mercury is in a sign that encourages keeping the peace at all costs. So it's a marvelous time to practice doing the opposite. If you need to, get more mouth in the room, it'll be harder when Mercury's in Libra, but more valuable to find a voice in the peaceful, harmonious sign of Libra, but that speaks truth and speaks directly. Mercury in Libra would encourage indirect communication and passive aggression when bothered or triggered or troubled. So watch out for that while Mercury is in Libra, but otherwise enjoy the more loving sense of communication. All right, kids, shameless plug time. There's a lot happening this weekend that might interest some of you. First of all, I'm teaching my first class ever in transits. It's been so long in coming. I kind of got distracted by all the process classes I was teaching in the pandemic and the years beyond that I moved away from astrology. But I'm creating an astrology school, and that school can't be complete until I have a class where I'm teaching you how to work with the transiting planets. So if you know your natal chart well enough that you could probably move to the next level of your working with astrology, this is the class for you. In 3 classes starting this Saturday, I'm teaching Working with Transits Level 1, where we'll go into all of the geometry and the technical aspects of transiting planets, and we'll cover what it's like to work with the sun and the moon. Level 1. There'll be a level 2 coming in the beginning of next year, but if you want to take your astrology studies to the next level, and this feels like the right time, go over to michaellennox.com. There's a banner right in the middle of the page, and you can find out more about my Working with Transits Level 1. And while you're there, you cannot miss the other banner on michaellenix.com because that's for my Mars retrograde webinar. That's this Sunday at 10 a.m. Going to meet for about 2 to 3 hours. There is an exchange of $24.95 for that. And I'm going to give you everything you need to know to move through Mars's next powerful retrograde cycle that starts up in October. So, couple of things to check out. Head on over to the website and see if one of these classes is for you, and have at it. I've gotten a lot of questions in the last week or two about the idea that this is a South Node eclipse. The question that I read last week that sort of got me into wanting to talk about this a little bit more was, oh, wait, the North Node is moving into Pisces, and last week's eclipse was a full moon in Pisces. Isn't that a North Node eclipse? I was like, no, the eclipse season is marked either a South Node or a North Node eclipse based on where the sun is, not the moon. Because an eclipse is either having us aware of the past, sun near the South Node, or our conscious awareness is aligned with where we're going next, the North Node, the future. So yes, while the sun is near the South Node, the full moon of that eclipse season will be having the moon near the North Node, but the sun, the conscious awareness, is what counts in this picture, not the moon. So the South Node is right now in the sign of Libra. The North Node is in Aries. Yes, these nodes will change signs at the beginning of next year. So the next 18 months of eclipses has the nodes in a whole other territory. And if you show up at my forecast for 2025, I'll be talking all about that. But because the sun is near the South Node, even though it's in Virgo, the sun's in Virgo and the South Node is in the very beginning degrees of Libra, they're close enough that we pass through the shadow. But make no mistake about it. Even though the full moon was in Pisces, the sun in Virgo was near the South Node, and the new moon in 2 weeks will be right near the South Node. This is a South Node eclipse season where we're more focused on what we're moving away from than where we're going next. In 6 months, when we have our next eclipse season, the sun will be hovering by the North Node, and it'll be about moving forward. So why I'm bringing this up now, even though it's a week past the full moon eclipse, is that the South Node is the point that holds the juice that generates the eclipse. It's the point that has our past in it. So the sun is going to conjunct the South Node on Saturday, and Mercury will do the same on Sunday. So that's like an eclipse activation moment. You might be very concerned with issues and items from the past that are coming up. Patterns, people, anything that looks like it's from your past that crosses your consciousness. I'm going to say Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and Monday, like the whole couple of days, not just Saturday and Sunday, because we feel these transits for more than just one day. We feel the Sun and Mercury transits for like 2 to 3 days each. So just know that as we move towards the end of this week and through the weekend, I want you to be taking stock, especially since we've already been in an eclipse season with a full moon that's about releasing, and I talked all about that. It was releasing the past because of the South Node proximity. Do an extra glance as you move through the weekend about things from your past that you know you're working on releasing, and maybe put a little bit of mental effort into that, writing an inventory, burning it as a ritual, some sort of reflection about what you're letting go of at this time, because our conscious awareness and our voices, the Sun and Mercury, are right in the place where the past is sitting there just waiting for us to throw it away. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have a call-in dreamer from Georgia. Hey Michelle, what you dreaming?
Hey, thanks for having me on. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a dream that I was sitting in a field with some very tall grass, and I distinctly remember like there being a small brick wall going across the field. And then as I looked up, it was like sunset. The sky was pinkish and purple, like those good sunset colors.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like emerging like out of the clouds was an angel that appeared. And then very quickly after that, Jesus showed up in the sky and said to me,
Fabulous.
yes, and said to me that he was coming soon. And that the dream ended very quickly. That was about it. And I remember after waking up, I felt almost panicked and just felt like it wasn't like a positive part.
hence you're calling me and not on some like conservative TikTok, exchange
Yeah.
about like, can we know the date that Jesus is returning, so
Right.
that we can, be prepared. So talk to me just about Jesus and Christianity and your life and what your associations are so that we can have that before I sort of dive in and feel out what the dream is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I will like to also mention that the next day we actually found out that my husband's best friend of 29 years passed away. So I feel like there was some sort of connection there. And when we found that out, there was a lot of clarity with that. So I am a very spiritual person. I dream quite frequently, and I've always felt that I've been a very intuitive and connected to the spiritual realm. So
Wow.
that
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm trying to inch into a little more then. So was this person who passed away, was there any Jesus or Christianity connection with him in waking life?
Yes, very much so. Very, very much so.
Okay. I think I have enough. Let's see where we go with this. The opening of any dream sort of speaks to the theme, just like if you were writing a screenplay, you would want the opening of the screenplay of the movie to like really give the audience a sense of what's the story they're going to be told. So we always pay a lot of attention to that. So sitting in a field with tall grass right there is like to be in the heart of Mother Gaia, right? You're right there in a very natural setting. It sounded very idyllic and beautiful the way that you described it. And even the idea of sitting in tall grass gives me, at least in the hearing of that imagery, a sense of envelopment, right? You really painted a lovely picture. And since we all live on the same earth, now I'm adding this because of where I want to go in a moment. Because we all live on the same earth with the same fields and the same grass, that image to me is like you exploring oneness with life, with nature, with abundance in the Gaian sense, because that's the image. There's nothing else in there but sitting in a field of tall grass. So that's where I go first. I'm going to skip something for a second. So then we get towards the kind of the end of the day, that as the sun is going down, then we're leaning into shadow, right? Daylight is conscious awareness. Nighttime is feminine and reveals things that we couldn't see if the bright, shiny light of consciousness is blurring our unconscious ability to lean into. So the fact that sunset's coming knows you're in a deeper consideration of like what's below, what's in the nighttime consciousness. And it's beautiful, right? It's inviting and it's so, the angel appearing is certainly a message from spirit, and specifically Jesus coming is like to talk about the sort of final transformation, right? The final sort of peace, we'll call it peace for psyche or something. Jesus comes, right? We're seeing Jesus in this dream as for everybody, right? The message is peace is coming, harmony is coming, love is coming. So that to me is what the dream is. It's like you sitting in God's, green earth held by mother, with father energy turning into sunset, and you get this beautiful message. But there's a brick wall. There's a fucking brick wall in the middle of this field that is for all of us. So now, a dream where Christ is coming in the ethers when someone is passing, and the phenomena can happen in the dream state where we tap into information that we should have no business knowing about. You actually had a fundamental sort of glimpse at, I think the message is, though we feel divided on the earth, when Jesus comes, he comes for us all. And I certainly don't mean that in a Christian way. I mean that in an archetypal way. Did you have any thoughts about that brick wall?
I just thought it was interesting that it was there.
Yeah.
I didn't really actually understand the representation of it.
Wow. Well, that's what it speaks to me because, that's what we would do out in natural settings. Old farmers would separate their land with these walls made out of stone. Brick is even less natural than a wall. Like if you make a stone wall in a farming field, you've gone around getting the granite and you pile it up in a bricks you got to make. You got to go through a lot of process to separate this side from that side. And that to me speaks to the divide that we're all trying to sort of make smaller today so that we have, we get rid of that brick wall and we understand that everybody gets to be connected to the divine, though we might define the divine differently. Wow.
Yeah, and I will say too, a week later at the Celebration of Life, we did witness around the 8:00 at night, around the time that he passed, a gigantic rainbow over his home. So that also
honey,
beautiful.
This is where the divide is healed. The divide in ideology is healed at the personal level when love transcends the mechanized divide that's mental and intellectual. Oh, well, I'm sorry for the loss, but I'm delighted for the message behind it. And it sounds like the memorial and the process had a completion for you?
Yes. And the dream also, now that I kind of have more of an understanding of it, gives me a little bit more peace.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, that's why we do it, I think, because the dreams are showing us something, and I really appreciate you coming to me and asking for, my participation in your process. It's always an honor, so thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.